Hey Last Looks crew, welcome to our annual Last Looks Oscars special episodes where I interview all 5 teams nominated for their outstanding work. This is the 96th Annual Academy Awards. The awards will be held March 10th at the Dolby Theatre in Hollywood. Every team is asked the same set of questions, but of course they all give very different answers. Every year, the work is excellent, and this year is no different. I want to take a quick moment to thank all our Last Look sponsors. You truly help keep this little beast of a show going, and for that, I am forever grateful. If you would like to support the podcast, it's as easy as buying us a coffee. And when I say us, I mean me. Don't be fooled in thinking there is a team of podcast elves helping. You can find a link in the show notes of any of these episodes if you would like to show your love and support. My name is Jamie Lee, a film hairstylist living in Long Beach, and this is the Last Looks podcast, a show where I catch up with hairstylists and makeup artists working in the film and TV industries around the world. And today, in these Oscars special episodes, I'm speaking with all 5 Oscar-nominated teams for their outstanding work. Let's do this.
And now, a word from our sponsor.
Mio Cosmetic Cases are the preferred safety touch-up system for pro makeup and hair artists. As makeup and hair professionals, we are constantly having to carry an endless amount of products in our kit, always in search of new ways to condense our kits and increase efficiency on the job. Mio Cosmetic Cases offer on-set touch-up kits that hold multiple types of makeup, helping you save valuable touch-up time on set, keeping your makeup safe and hygienic for talent, and significantly lightening your travel and set bags. They also offer depotting storage palettes in various sizes that assist to reduce weight and bulk in professional artist kits. A committed and globally verified environmentally conscious company, Mio Cosmetic Cases allows you to feel empowered that when using our products, you are committing to save the planet one small act at a time. Join the Mio movement today at myocosmeticcases.com. Mio Cosmetic Cases, meticulously designed with pros in mind.
And now, our feature presentation.
Pictures up.
Last looks. Rolling.
And action.
Welcome to the Last Looks podcast team.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thanks. Thank you.
Hello, welcome.
Congratulations on your Oscar nomination for your work on the film Poor Things.
Thank you very much.
And the work being considered for the film Poor Things is makeup and hairstyling for the overall film. So if you could each tell us your name and what your position on the film was.
Nadia Stacey, I'm makeup, hair and prosthetics designer.
Mark Coulier, prosthetics designer.
Josh Weston, the prosthetic supervisor.
Fantastic. So I would love to know, and always love to know, when you first heard the news that you had been nominated, what was the first thought that came to mind?
It's just super exciting. It's always a bit surreal, and it's always just super exciting, to be recognised in the thing that you love doing is just amazing. And I just always still feel like that girl in college that was like, do you think I could work in film? And then you have these moments and you're like, oh my gosh. So yeah, it's just amazing. And also for this film particularly, I'm really proud that we got there with this.
That's awesome. Did you watch the announcement or how did you find out?
Yeah, I watched it with my mum and then I had my friend on FaceTime watching. So yeah, it was really lovely and it was really nice to watch it with my mum.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I think we were busy in the workshop and I was wrapped up in lots of things, different projects going on. And so I'd sort of forgotten about it and then suddenly received a text during the afternoon. I mean, knew the announcements were coming up and, but when you're busy and we're just chatting, I think I was out at Long Cross Studios about to go into a meeting and then the phone pinged, and then it was like, yay, we've been nominated. And like Nadia said, it's really cool to be, just to be recognized really for all the hard work. We all work hard. We do long hours. It's a pretty intense job. There's a lot of stress and pressure on it. So to actually get through it all and come out at the other end with a nomination, a recognition of the work that you've put in, it's really great.
Yeah, no, I was quite amazed, really surprised as well. I didn't think I was really happy that the makeup's being and all the work's being recognised, but that when making it, I thought it was a bit wacky, so I didn't think anyone would take much notice really at first. But obviously, Yorgos Lanthimos film, I knew it was going to be a great film, but it was just amazed, really happy, really excited to be a part of it. So yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's get into some of the characters and what you guys did. So if you could talk us through 3 of the characters from the film, makeup and hair-wise, from research and development through to daily application. Nadia, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'll start with Bella, and then I can pass on Baxter to the guys. Emma Stone playing Bella. I think the main thing for me was that Emma said in an interview actually that she's basically playing a woman that was able to start from scratch, like with no kind of restraints to society or no, rules and I just felt like that's something we haven't seen. It's not something that exists. So, and then I saw the kind of world that our production designers, Shona and James, were creating and realised that it was very Yorgos in the fact that like it was going to be very out there and we could kind of push it really. And so I wanted Bella to stand out in that world. I wanted her to look kind of strange and otherworldly. And so taking her hair jet black against all these kind of colourful sets was definitely helped that, against her pale skin as well. And dyeing her eyebrows, all of that just gave a really kind of solid, strong frame to begin with. And then it's scripted that her hair grows at an accelerated rate. So I wanted to map that out with the journeys that she goes on through the film. So I changed the hair lengths when she gets to Lisbon, then at the ship, then in Paris. And I did all that with hair wefts because Yorgos sent me an email saying no wigs. It just said no wigs, which is always helpful.
Yeah, yes, boss.
But actually it was the right thing to do. And used all these beautiful fine hair wefts that were made by Samuel James and then just kind of kept changing that length to sort of grow with her, if you like. And we got that application down pretty quickly, put kind of micro braids in her hair and then attached to the braids. And that it was pretty quick, actually. It was just sort of the fact that the makeup bus was covered in hair, like huge hair wefts everywhere. And then in the beginning, she doesn't have makeup because she's a baby and she's an experiment being looked after in this controlled circumstances. And then the only time that she really starts to play with makeup is when we get to the brothel and she meets Madame Swiney and the brothel girls. And that's her chance to sort of experiment. And it's always the same with Yorgos. He doesn't like makeup for the sake of makeup. It needs to be part of the storytelling process. So it's just, the same with hair as well. It needs to be part of the story. So yeah, that was our Bella.
And so when you say, is it a no makeup look or is it no makeup?
It's no makeup. I mean, I literally kind of clear gels, combed her eyebrows up. I mean, nothing. He will check as well. Like he'll put his finger on her face and check to see. And some days he's like, are you wearing makeup? And she's like, no, definitely not. So yeah, he will check.
She's like, I just got my beauty sleep last night. Leave me alone.
Exactly. Yes. There's a lot of skincare involved and a lot of kind of eye masks and ice rollers and everything to kind of get, make sure her skin looks good. But it's a pretty easy job. She's pretty, it's a good canvas to work from. So
that's amazing.
Do you want to start with Baxter and you and Josh?
Yeah, I'll start. Yeah, we've been presented with this this character, Godwin Baxter, he's been operated on, experimented on by his surgeon father when he's a child. And he's disfigured and described as monstrous in the script. So, initially, we find it Willem Dafoe's playing the character. So, and then Yorgos is going to want something new and interesting. And that was our main thrust, really. It was, okay, what do we do to this guy? How's he been experimented on? What's his father done to him? How far has it all gone? How hideous is he? It's a blank canvas at that point. And Yorgos is not the easiest person to dig into his mind. Normally I'll say, what are your influences and what do you hate and what do you not hate? But it was more, just make some stuff and then we'll see how it goes. So we started, I think it was very, we had no access to Willem initially. So I said to Josh, why don't we sculpt? Josh had done it before with a performer, just sculpt a portrait bust and then start doing some, just playing around really. So it was, meanwhile, Josh was sculpting that portrait bust of Willem so that we could get ahead before we got a head cast. I got two of my favorite concept guys, one Pietro di Scola Mambro, who we worked with on Pinocchio, and then Paul Catlin, who I've worked with for 25, 30 years. And we have a good working relationship with these guys. So they started drawing stuff and I started drawing stuff and Josh started sculpting stuff. And then it was just a big mass of designs. I don't know how many designs we ended up, how many versions, but it was probably 40 different versions at least.
I'd love to see that process, that line of where you started.
We'll get all these pictures together, and we'll probably have them on a slideshow at the symposium. Which will be really interesting because it just shows the development of it all, how crazy we did actually go, and then we had to sort of bring it back, and then ended up, So a lot of it was trying to find, for me, there's try to find a logic to it. What's his father done to him? Has he opened up his head and experimented on his brain, or has he? And the more I spoke to Yorgos about it, the more he was just not interested in the logic of it. So it was then trying to find something. He just wanted something bizarre, but still Willem Dafoe, but as crazy as we could make it whilst still remaining realistic and able to, for you to have empathy with him and for him to be accepted as a normal character. Well, not normal, but as a character, not this sort of, he wasn't a shuffling, disfigured, somebody who hides in the shadows or puts a bag over his head or anything. He's a working surgeon that lectures, and therefore we had to keep him, we had to bear in mind that he was going to remain erudite and he was going to still remain a sympathetic character. I'll let Josh speak a little bit as well about that initial stages, because Josh's input was integral to the development of the look of this. It was a big combination of designs, drawings, and then what Josh brought to the table as well. Do you want to carry on, Josh?
Yeah, well, as Mark said, I just initially started sculpting a portrait so we could get ahead of the game a little bit. And then initially we were going down the route of the wrong route, looking at injuries and things like that, and different other things on the internet and stuff, just to try and create different looks like goiters and other scars that Yorgos didn't really respond to. So we were just trying to find out at the beginning what he kind of didn't like. And then it was just a case of just researching all different types of scarring for me, really, and placement of scars, and trying to keep it really asymmetrical and fresh looking, but keeping it loose as well, because I ended up, eventually when we did get the live cast of Willem, ended up sculpting another probably about 8 or 9 versions on that, whilst all the other bits and pieces was going on in the background. And then taking all that information and chopping it up and mixing and matching from other different sculpts that were done previously and trying to create something fresh again, and going from there really until we settled on something that we got a response to.
It's funny because we got to a point, Josh, didn't we, where actually we were really happy with one particular look that we had, and we were like, wow, this is good.
Yeah.
And then we had to completely change it.
Then it all went around. Yeah, and
we had 3 people sculpting on it, and then all of a sudden it was like, okay, we've done something on one side of the face, and we had to change it to the other side of the face, and pretty much start from scratch.
Yeah. So there was a lot of toing and froing with all the different sculpts until we settled on a look. But then, we had to get things underway and start molding and get the process going, really. And then when we got to Budapest for our initial test, I think the response was okay, but Jorga still wanted more volume from the chin, so we had no time to go back and resculpt anything. It just takes too long. So Mark had the idea of putting some plumpers underneath, which we glued on first, and then applied the chin on top of that, which then gave it more volume and it gave it a bit more of an organic shape, and it just created another kind of extreme look. And I think he was happy with that. So as soon as we did that, we kind of got light.
And Josh, when you say plumpers, what do you mean?
Plumpers, they're just, you sculpt little shapes. Let's just say, for instance, in this case, it was on the chin. So you'd sculpt add a volume of material to the skin first. You'd glue these shapes on to the face, which essentially it's plumping out the existing piece that you then glue on top of that. If you understand, it's a bit of a technical thing, but you're basically gluing a prosthetic onto another one, just to give it more volume.
At this point, we got so close to, we had one test on Willem, and then we were filming a few days later, maybe a week later, I think. We had no time to change anything. And it had got to that point, just because of actor availability, and because of COVID and travel restrictions and everything else, we were really down to the wire. So there was no opportunity to go back and resculpt anything. And, it does happen from time to time.
Yeah, you made it work.
You can spend 4 or 5 months doing designs, but still only end up with one test day because, your actor's busy on other shows, and, there's a little window and you have to accommodate it, really. So we were kind of forced into this position of making these little enhancements that go underneath the skin. We did a very similar thing on Elvis, when Baz Luhrmann and CM, his partner and production designer, wanted to, enhance the amount of weight on his neck. And we just had sculpted a little plumper that went underneath. Again, it's a little pad. A little pad to push out the prosthetic a bit.
Yeah, it's awesome. Very innovative. Josh, did you want to talk about daily application and kind of looking after that makeup throughout the day?
Yeah. Well, it was applied with myself and Robin Pritchard every day. I mean, the process would start really early. It was usually about 3:30 in the chair. Willem's really relaxed, though, so he created a really relaxed environment, really super easy to work in. And it took us about 2 hours, 45 minutes in all to get all the pieces on, 5 individual pieces. And then he's off to hair, to Carolyn Cousins, who did his hair, and then to costume. And then he's back to us for final sort of checks before he's on set, really. And it was just, it flowed really easily. And then just the general touch-ups on set were really good. I mean, he didn't sweat. So it was
nice.
Really, it was amazing. You get a lot of actors and you get under those lights and it's just so hot. But for Willem, it didn't seem to do much, which was fantastic for us.
Perfect.
So the daily kind of maintenance, and he would really look after it at lunchtime anyway. So we didn't, it was just the usual things, really. No horror stories, nothing horrendous at all. And we shot for about 21 filming days with him, and we had a few test days on top of that. Yeah, it was great. It was just real good fun. We had the thumbs, and it was on Robin's side more so was the more exaggerated one that you pretty much see most of on film. And my side was more of a blackened nail in the end, and we did use a piece, but Willem found it really hard to maintain that right-handed thumb piece, so we had to figure out something else for him. But the thumbs in general and finger appliances are really hard to maintain. So that was probably the hardest part. of the makeup to actually looking after all the little frayed edges of a thumb appliance. Yeah, there's something you have to be on top of all the time. But his general face makeup, it stayed exactly where it was. And, Yorgos doesn't do wigs, so there was no wig involved. So that element was, that was Willem's own hair. So all these things, and there was nothing on his neck either. And it's just certain things that made the life a little easier than other makeups in the past, where you have to maintain neck and collar rub and things like that. But we didn't need that on this one, and we gained enough of an interesting look just from the facial makeup itself.
Yeah, that was the thing when we were designing that. We looked at his neck and the movement on his neck and the way it wrinkled and everything else, and it was like, okay, let's not cover that up because it's so, it's such a great part of Willem's face. The character that's in there. Don't cover up anything that we can use to our advantage.
Yeah. Exactly. Nadia, did you want to talk about just the other characters, just a general vibe and design and feel for them?
Yeah, I think it's sort of the same thing I was saying about Bella, really, and the same with Baxter. We all just felt like we needed to design stuff that was new, and that this world was so strange that there's elements to them that is kind of something we haven't seen before. And so I'm like, one of my favourites and a good example of that is Madame Swiney in the brothel. It's, I knew there was going to be one scene where we'd see her body, and the rest of the time, Holly Waddington, our costume designer, dressed her. She said she wanted her to look like a human armchair, so she had so much fabric on her. So I never thought we'd really see much of her, and then I knew there was going to be this one scene, and I just said to Yorgos, can I cover her in tattoos? And he was like, yeah, sure. And there was so he gave me the go ahead. And then there's just something about Catherine Hunters, who played Swiney's. She's just this amazing physicality and this amazing actress, and I was sort of kind of obsessed about who Madame Swiney was. Who is this woman that's running this brothel at that time in Paris, and what's her life been before? And I just kind of like the idea that you could map it out on her body and all these tattoos. So she's got like French sailors' names on her arm, and she got like tattoos that kind of work with their physicality. And so I loved that. And I just thought it's really strange that you just have it for this one moment and it's never, referenced or anything. And yeah, we just tried to do that with most of the characters, to be honest, to give them something different. Like Hannah, the only wig I was allowed to use was Hannah on the ship when Bella says that this lady with strange hair. So the white one is the only wig we're allowed to use. And it's just, it's weird in the middle of this ship with all this background artists with Victorian hairstyles. She's got this kind of odd, asymmetric, sort of 30s-ish like look, which just doesn't sort of fit in anywhere, but it kind of does because it's so strange. So I just, I wanted to kind of apply that element to everyone, really. And the girls in the brothel, I liked the idea of the makeup is all connected to the colours of the medical references back in Baxter. So it's all like purples from veins and pinks of skin, and it's that kind of thing. So that's all the palette in there. So it just was making it strange, but also making it cohesive and connecting it to everything in the world, making sure we were always connected to costume and to production design so that it felt odd, but you weren't constantly sort of thrown. You believed the world you were in.
Yeah. That's amazing. So each year, the nominated films showcase such a wonderful range of work. How do you guys feel your work differs from your fellow nominees?
I think from the Baxter point of view, people are always say when you do a makeup, especially a big prosthetic makeup, create a character, there's always somebody who goes, oh, that looks like this, or that looks like that, or this reminds me of this makeup from this. But we've thought about it, and myself and Josh have talked about it, and it's like we can't think of another film that has a makeup in it that's like Baxter. So it's really nice to do something that actually you think, oh, that is pretty unusual and pretty new. And obviously Yorgos, the way he makes his films enables you to come up with something like that in this particular project anyway. So I think our work differs in that respect, mainly.
Yeah, and it's nice to know that it's possible, Mark.
Yes, absolutely.
People are just like, everything's being recycled, and it's just like, no, you can do something new. I promise.
Yeah. It is the difficult thing, but how do you do a new zombie, or how do you do a new Dracula? It's you've got to kind of come up with something. That's always the most exciting challenge, though, really, out of all of it. The work in all the other nominees is phenomenal this year. It's just really great across the board, really. So ours is just a different project. They all differ from each other, but ours is particularly different just because Baxter is this weird, outlandish character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well said.
Yeah, I would just kind of echo that, really, that I feel like the talent's really high this year, across the board. It's really lovely being at the Bake Off and listening to everybody. But I just think ours feels, different, and sort of trying to find something new and trying to make characters that have got something kind of, slightly edgy and different about them. So I think that's probably where we differ.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like everyone said, it's just a really different. I mean, you've got the Baxter character, which is completely wacky, and it's going up against majority of things that have won awards recently. It's been like your standard sort of old age makeup, all lovely work, but there's not been anything that looks a bit like Baxter that I've ever seen. So I think we've got that going for us. I think it's a great thing, and everything else, all the other period makes everything kind of works together, and with the costumes, everything all sits really well. And it's just different. There is strong competition, don't get me wrong, but all the other work is great. But ours is just a bit out there, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah, I love it. And what did you find to be your biggest challenge during filming?
There were lots of sort of day-to-day challenges. We were just off the back of COVID, so we were still very much in COVID masks, and that was strange because all these sets were built. So everything you see is a built set. So you would walk in a door of a studio and you'd be, say, in Paris. And these sets were so amazing that you sort of felt you were outside, but you weren't. So there was you'd had no fresh air all day. So there's like general sort of things like that. And it was difficult to get anything into the country, difficult to materials and things like that for us. And then I suppose the biggest challenge is that it's sort of a compliment, but also the biggest challenge is that Yorgos gives you this crazy amount of creative freedom. But at the time, that's really difficult because you don't really have a start or a reference point. So you're not really working off of anything. And like Mark was saying about the design with Baxter, you don't get notes back where you can go, oh, I see, right, that's what it is. He'll just tell you if he likes something or if he doesn't. And sometimes we'll just go, yeah, let's shoot on it. So you think, oh, we must be happy with it because he wants to shoot on it. But you just don't know. So it's really difficult. And when you're trying to create something new, again, there's no reference point. You're not saying, right, this is Victorian London. I know what the hair shapes are. I know what the makeup is. I know what you're trying to think outside the box. So I think that's the challenge. I always say films make sense backwards when you've worked on them. You look back and go, oh, I see, right, that's what we were doing. But at the time, you're like,
Yeah, so I can imagine you're like, where do I start? And then what direction am I going?
Yeah, because you don't know. If you said to him, I want to paint everyone's face blue, he might say, great, let's do it. Or he might say, you're crazy. You just don't know. You can't tell.
Awesome.
Nadia's kind of covered the Baxter thing and the just working that out. I think we've talked about that and how that was a challenge. But the other challenge was all the other gags that we did on the show. For me, we were doing other shows as well. So we were doing Asteroid City for Wes Anderson, and I was flying over to Spain. So I went to Budapest, and myself and Josh applied the test makeup. So we got all that working, and then I had to fly to Spain and do the big alien thing on Jeff Goldblum. And then I think 2 days after we shot that, I flew back and did the pregnant belly on Emma Stone. And the day after that, we had the big operation sequence with the full chest makeup on Baxter with blood tubing and tumors and the day after that, we were lugging the huge bodies around, myself and Paul Jones, trying to wrangle them up a staircase into the sort of medical room where Baxter was giving his talk. And it was difficult. Everything about it was difficult. The traveling back and forth, the information, making those bodies. We had somebody who did, what do you call them? Somebody who did autopsies for real. And she was Yorgos's observer. We'd take the body on set. And it was great because she could say, this is where we put the rib cage, and this is where we put the liver and the heart, and how much blood was dressed on the bodies, and all that was really factual. We'd made these, pretty incredible bodies that my crew had made, slaved and toiled over, and it was nice to get a response from her where she said, actually, this looks pretty real. When she's looking inside, we did all the internal cavity and rib cage. Cool. And
do you know what's crazy, Mark? I was just going to say, do you know what's crazy is that we all talk about Baxter and Bella and Swiney and all these characters so much that every now and again I forget how many other huge prosthetics were in it. You kind of go, oh yeah, like there was just constant masses of things, different bodies and operations and autopsies.
Yeah, you don't see them much in the film, but they're all there. The male body that has his
crazy amount. Yeah.
The amount of work that took to get those stabby eyes looking right, and had Sebastian Lochman, making them out of silica and injecting blood into them so that when she stabs them, blood squirts out of them. Yorgos wanted it to be really pretty strong and powerful, because she's just, this woman with a child's brain, so therefore she doesn't understand what she's doing, and it's a pretty horrific moment in the film, but just that one gag, that one body took a couple of months, probably 3 months to make that body.
Wow.
And all credit to all the guys on the crew, Paul Jones and Adam Edwards and Kate Woodhead in the silicone department, Charlotte Vega, who was punching the eyebrow into the Baxter pieces every day, and the hair around the earpiece. There was like 20 people involved on it, just on our crew, and then Nadia's team and all the hair team. There's a lot of people involved. So a big challenge, wrestling all that and getting it all ready for filming. Because this wasn't a huge budget for us.
Yeah. Josh, biggest challenge?
Maintaining the makeup, really, on a day-to-day basis. But that was it for us. We were quite fortunate, really, because we were out in a different sort of set at the beginning. So we didn't really do any of the Portugal sort of stuff. So it was all quite nice, and the weather wasn't too hot. So there's all these things that after you've stuck the makeup on, it's your job is just to maintain the thing, really. So you've just got to be on board with that, and it was quite sort of stressful at times, but and long hours. So just maintaining the makeup, really, and then all the other the little makeups in between. The Alfie head scar, that was another makeup that we did. That was quite cool, and I had a couple of test makeups on that before we shot that one. That was sculpted by Paul Jones, and Charolta again doing the hair punching. Amazing job with Andrea doing the hair work and straight makeup, and so all these other little things added in as well as looking after Willem, but with Robin with me it was easier. But for me that was it. That was all my involvement was with Baxter. So
nice. And Nadia, standout lessons learned. Did you get to the end of that and like, I learned my lesson on this, I learned this, I learned how to do that? Yeah. At the end of it, you look back. What did you learn?
I mean, I learned lots. Like, technically, I learned lots of things, and it's always great working with these guys. They're the best. So it's but do you know what? I don't know if I have learned, because it's you get to the end of a Yorgos film, you're like, oh, I just don't know if I could do that again. But then they're so good, they're so good that you're like, well, maybe I would. I imagine it's like childbirth. You sort of forget. It's like afterwards, the reward of it is like it's amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing what the mind does to help you keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was genuinely like really quite an emotional project for me. I remember because it was so important for Emma to play her, and she was so invested in playing Bella that we all sort of fell in love with Bella. And I remember on the last day, I cut Emily's own hair, or took the hair weft. I can't remember, but the hair dropped to the floor. And we cried. It was like the end of Bella. It was really sad. So yeah, I don't know if I learned anything in terms of like doing the job in that sense, but technically so many things, which is great, and as it should be.
Awesome. What about you, Mark? That you can survive on jet fumes?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I think I learn something new every time about trying to maneuver around a really tricky production where let's say you're designing something and you're not getting feedback as an employer, as a person who's trying to work out how to get this thing made by a particular date. You have to come up with all sorts of plans of how you're going to explain that to production. So you have to sort of, day one, prosthetics are needed. Let's say he's needed for 5 days in a row. You've got to plan on when those 5 days need to be made by. And if you're shooting in Budapest, somewhere in the UK, you need another week and blah, 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 blah. So you go backwards on a calendar and you say, okay, this is our cutoff date. And it might be 2 months before filming, but that's the day that you really have to start making pieces, so that you can get them out in time. And each film presents a different problem like that. And this one was really particularly difficult because we weren't getting an approval, we weren't getting and I was trying to impress to everyone that actually, if we don't get approval on the sculpture on this particular day, we are not going to hit the filming date. So I had to explain it in a way that I said to production that, it's like going into a car showroom and saying you want a really beautiful sports car, but you can't tell them what color you want it. You can't tell them how many wheels you want it to have, and you can't tell them what engine you want, and you can't tell them what you want the body to look like, but you want it by this date. And I said to them, we work on feedback. You have to have feedback to progress a design. So, that was one thing I learned on that one. It was just a little way of describing to them how difficult the situation is if you're not getting feedback. How do you get that sports car that you want?
Yeah, educating production. Good on you.
I do think it did make the point. It was a bit of a crude way to do it, but it just made the point. And I think every film I've worked on, I've learned a different technique or a different phraseology to get to push the process along and try and solve the problem. The problem being time. The time's always the problem. You can carry on. I mean, I'm sure Yorgos, as the visionary that he is, would want to redesign that prosthetic probably for the next 2 years, and you'd never get to a finished thing that he'd be 100% happy with until he sees it, and then all sits into place. But when he's designing it, he can have it as much as he wants, and it's down to us to say, no, you can't have everything. You've got to say, we've got to start making it on this date, and we've got to do all the repeats. So we have to work to this date, That was my standout lesson that I learned on that one, how to get that process moving along.
Yeah, I like it.
Well, fortunately, I don't have to deal with any of that. So
that's your lesson. Yeah. Remind me not to deal with that. That was your lesson.
Can we swap, Josh?
Sculpturally, I always try and improve each sculpture each time I do a different project or do a different sculpt. So everything has to be improved on. So I'm trying to learn each time, trying to get better in that sense. And then, with application, you glue something on, and then you just go away at the end of it. You think, if I'd have done it a different way, and you try and figure out different ways and techniques and to get quicker and things like that. And you can turn a 3-hour makeup into an hour and a half, and so you've learned how to do things more efficiently. And I like doing things like that, and chatting with Robin and figuring out different ways to secure the piece on and things like that, really. But just sculpturally, generally, I always try and improve on each thing each time. So yeah, I learn from each sculpt.
I love it. And you guys have mentioned so many names already, but as we know, it takes a team. Did you guys want to take a moment to give a shout out to those that helped you on the project?
Yeah, I'd love to mention some people in my team. If Carolyn Cousins was our supervisor, who just couldn't have done it without, is an amazing all-rounder, and looked after Mark Ruffalo. Ellen DeAndre Brown was our key hair and makeup, and she looked after Alfie and Madam Swiney and Max. Grace in Galway came out, I think it was about her third job, maybe. So it was a baptism of fire for her. And she was looked after lots of characters, but she actually did that wig on the ship for Hannah, which took so many different versions of that as well to get to what Yorgos liked. And then Claire Campbell, another hair and makeup artist, and all our Hungarian crew were just so fantastic. Judith and Hildy, amazing and so supportive. So yeah, just like you said, it's a team of people, and that specifically those guys for me, I couldn't have done it without them.
Well, Robin Pritchard for me, who stuck the makeup on with me, and obviously Mark and Nadia and everyone's team, and yeah, everyone at Coulier Creatures. There's loads of people behind the scenes at Coulier Creatures that made all these different makeups happen, and the bodies. There's just, must be over 25. I'm sure Mark will work.
Yeah, I'll jump in there with, Paul Jones was one of the main guys who was helping with all the gags and the rigs, and Adam Edwards, who's just, he's a bit of a technical genius. Adam, he came up with all the, when Baxter takes the brain out of Emma Stone's head, Adam came up with this really fantastic way of 3D printing and doing the inside of the skull, so that hardly anyone will notice it. But when he takes the brain out of her head, there is an inside of skull sculpted digitally and we 3D printed that and placed it into a head, and that was digitally mapped onto Emma Stone. So Adam Edwards, he's a bit of a genius, and comes up with all sorts of fabulous gags. And Stephen Murphy, who's one of my regular team members, and helped with makeups and bodies and various things, and also plays the guy that Baxter cuts into. So Stephen was actually, we glued a makeup on Stephen, and he was all rigged up with blood tubes and everything else. And Willem Dafoe actually cut him open for real. We did lots of, experiments with how you can scalpel, how you can cut onto someone. You have these cloths that you can't actually slice through. So we put a cloth underneath the prosthetic, and then Willem could actually cut straight into the silicone and slice it up and have blood coming out, David Pecorini, Chris Campbell, Alex Harper, sculptors on the bodies, and Alex making all the entrails and innards and all that stuff that looked totally real. In fact, there was a funny moment on set when I didn't see Yorgos, but I was clearing up at the end of the day, and we had some fake livers and some real livers, and we had some fake intestines and real ones, animal offal. I was actually prodding our one and the prodding the real liver and our liver to see which one was fake, and Yorgos just sniggered from the side of the set. He just chuckled and said, it must be good if you can't tell which real. That was quite a funny moment. I think it was our only compliment on the entire show, I think.
You got one.
On mold making department, Tom Packwood and Dylan Alves and Francesca Rivera, silicon department, Kate Woodhead, Dave Felstead, Helen Rowe, and then in the coordinating, Joe Keeble-Smith, Adam Griffiths, our trainee, who just works, tirelessly all the time in the background, running molds and biscuit foams and all sorts of stuff. Yeah, there's a few others, hair punchers. Charlotte Vague, who's really fabulous hair puncher, did all Willem's eyebrows. And, that's really crucial part of the makeup, because you don't want people going, that eyebrow looks different to the other one.
I was just going to say for me as well, just to say about you guys as well, to go to Mark with a project like this that is so huge with prosthetics and like they were saying, for them to get that design through for Bax, it was so difficult. But then when it's through and when things are on set, there's never a moment, the quality of the work is so high from the prosthetic side is just, there's never a moment where you're going, I wonder if it just is so good. So you don't have to think about it. So I was super lucky to have, and again, like Josh mentioned, Robin, like those guys on a day-to-day, they're just amazing to work with as well. So
I love it.
Yeah, and those prosthetics, I can't stress how important it is that the silicon runners, we have, Kate Woodhead and Helen Rowe, they just make the most beautiful pieces, and when it's so crucial that when you're sticking a piece on, you can dissolve the barrier super easy, and the blend and the paintwork and everything. So Josh and Robin, that's super important. The painting, it's all important. It's all crucial. But if you don't have the right mold making techniques, the edges aren't as good, then you have trouble sticking it on. You have edges showing, and it's a combination of all that: the silicon running, the designing, where the edges go, so that you don't see them, and the technique of applying it, the glues that we use, all that stuff is all crucial.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, guys, so a massive congratulations again. Enjoy the ride, and thanks for joining me.
thank you so much. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Thanks, guys.